Hey, thank you so much for letting me hang out with you this afternoon. I'm Scott Sands. Everywhere on your free iHeartRadio app, on demand, wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find me on TikTok, Insta, Facebook, Snap, Gather Truth, all the social platforms. I'm at Scott Sands Media. I've talked about NIL for a while on this show. Name, image, likeness. It's the ability for colleges to legally pay their student athletes. And personally, I think it's been horrible for the sport. I get it. I understand the value these athletes bring into universities around the country, especially some of the bigger name programs, and how important landing marquee players can be to programs like Michigan, Ohio State, my Alabama Crimson Tide. But it's Alabama and Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Texas, that seem to be in the spotlight right now over the whole NIL debate, including a story that says the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, where, it just means more, is just money laundering. I find this fascinating, and NIL in general is really now becoming more of a fan-generated activity. We're seeing it in some programs, including one that our next guest has founded. MyNILPay.com is the website, the app, and Brent Chapman is joining me now on the Scott Sands Show. Brent, it's great to have you on.
Scott, same. Thanks for having me.
Now, what are your thoughts initially on NIL? I mean, obviously with your company, you're in a position to try to take advantage of this and in a way democratize fans' ability to support a program through MyNILPay.com. But what were your thoughts before starting this program, before starting your company, on name, image, likeness?
I love how you said take advantage, because that was kind of my thoughts, right? Is that I'm actually trying to do the opposite of take advantage. I think that's what's sort of been happening before NIL, and even with the NIL rules, it hasn't really been NIL for all,
no.
Right? And so with my NIL pay, the idea was to kind of give access to NIL to all schools, all sports, D2, D3, the swimming team, the rowing team, and basketball and football. And so I think that's the real thing, is giving everyone an opportunity, right, to participate.
It seems like obviously the football, and to a certain extent, maybe lesser extent, basketball or baseball programs in the major conferences, the Power Five conferences, but especially the Big Ten, the SEC, is getting all the attention. We're also here in Northwest Ohio in the middle of MAC country, where we've got schools like Bowling Green and the University of Toledo that seem to be on the short end of the NIL stick. I mean, there are going to be athletes who receive NIL money at Toledo and Bowling Green, but it's going to be a lot less money than a starting lineman at Alabama or Ohio State. And the same thing, especially for the smaller programs like swimming or track or volleyball.
Yeah, I don't know that you can change that, right? I think that at the end of the day, just like in corporate America, right, the better you are at something, the more experienced, the more senior, the higher you are, and the more you're going to get, the more you're going to make, right? So it's kind of like experience, skill, how good you are, right? At the bigger companies or the smaller companies, you're going to make more, right? So I do want to say something that I think is important to what you just said is, in the first 6 months of NIL, about $500 million came in, mostly from corporate sponsors. It was before all the collective stuff, right?
Right.
65% of that money went to football players. 65%.
But
right?
At the same, that seems logical, because the football programs are generally the marquee programs at most universities, and they're the ones attracting the biggest fans and the biggest donors.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I think there's also an opportunity where you can give the opportunity to other student athletes to participate as well, right? But back to what you were saying a minute ago, if you're a top quarterback, you're going to get the shoe deal and you're going to get some big money. Whereas if you're a D3 soccer player, you're probably not going to get a Nike shoe deal. I'm just guessing.
Right. But you talk about the need for equality in NIL. They're really, you would like the equality of access, I guess, but that D3 soccer player should not get as much NIL money as Bryce Young would get at Alabama.
Well, I think that's, and we can talk a little bit about my NIL pay and why I say that, right? So my NIL pay creates a situation where fans today, it's really rich guys and corporations that can participate in NIL. My no pay allows fans, you, me, anybody listening to this show, right? We're watching the game. What a great shot. What a great block. Whatever. What a great play. Here's $20. $20, $20. I mean, we literally can be sitting in the bar.
So you're like tipping players if they have a good play.
Essentially, yeah, because you can do that, like any reason you want to give somebody money, you can. Now, maybe everyone listening to your show, definitely not you and your friends in Tuscaloosa, how much money would that young man for Tennessee have made with my NIL pay when he hit that field goal to beat Alabama back in the fall? Right. I know I would have given him $20 because I was happy to see him lose.
Right.
And I'm sure I'm not the only guy that was happy for that. Right. And I think that's where my NIL pay can be really fun for people. Right. But it's not just, if I'm just watching a volleyball match or soccer game or whatever, right, I can sit there and kind of tip the players and support the players as I'm watching the game, right? That's kind of cool. If I'm a D3 soccer player, I might have 10,000 followers on social media. Remember this, 6% of high school athletes make it to D1. So make it to D1, D2, or D3. So each one of these kids were the BMOC at their school. They were the top athlete. So they have friends and family at hometown. They have Twitter and Instagram followings, right? They have the ability with my NIL pay to go support me. There was a kid a couple days ago from George Washington, was A10 freshman of the year, and he went online and did a collab with us, and he got paid, I don't know, a few $100s in an hour by just us saying happy birthday and him saying, hey, go support me on my NIL pay. And 20 people, cut him off some money. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's very cool, and I think that, this needs to be, in a way, the direction that NIL goes, unless, part of me, as I said at the beginning, I miss the way that we used to pay players under the table where nobody knew about it. We knew it was happening, but this makes everything more above board.
It definitely was more fun when Eric Dickerson got a Trans Am.
Right, just mysteriously showed up. Right.
Yeah, then drove it around SMU.
I don't know where it came from. It showed up one day. Keys were in my mailbox. It was weird. For the good old days. So the thing today is, especially with social media, and I think NIL is able to drive more revenue for these student athletes because of social media. As many reasons as I'm critical of it. These are athletes that are growing up in school today with social media from birth to death and know how to grow their followers. And in many cases, some of these players on lesser sports, obviously the football and basketball players will continue to get the most attention, but you have star volleyball players or star swimmers who also happen to be hot, and that may be part of the reason they're successful on social media, but they're growing Instagram and TikTok followers in the hundreds of thousands, and they're able to convert those followers into collab deals for product placement on social media. Right. And in this particular case, if they're working with you and mynilpay.com to encourage people to support their athletic careers as well.
Now, this is the cool thing. When you say work with us, we preloaded every kid in the app. So they don't even need to know about it. Your listeners can just pick a kid, a Toledo kid, and send him some money. And he's going to get an email that says, the Johnny listener sent $20 to me, and he's going to sign up and collect that cash. That's pretty cool. So they don't even need to really know about it. They'll be alerted by fans. And obviously the advantage we talked about is if they are promoting it, it benefits them. I was at the NIL Summit in Atlanta this past week, and, we're new. We're 3 weeks old, and so a lot of the kids don't know about it. But you should see their faces when I show them they're in this app, and I send them money, and I send it to them right there, and they get a pop-up on their phone from their school email that says, hey, you just received $50. Huh. They're so happy. It's just so cool.
I would be too.
It's just so wow, this just blows my mind that we can do this.
Now,
and I think it's awesome.
In some NIL deals, Bryce Young is doing commercials for Dr. Pepper. Are the student athletes expected to do anything in return to the person who donates, or is this literally just a tip jar for fans of these athletes and these teams?
It's an NCAA compliant tip jar, as it's been described, Venmo of NIL. So what we do is we issue back to the fan a piece of digital art with the athlete's name and digital signature on it. That digital signature is the quid pro quo. That is the action taken to facilitate the transaction. So the athlete doesn't need to go to all those activation events and doesn't need to tweet 3 times and doesn't need to do all the other things that they have to do to get money from the collective. They literally just apply that digital signature and they're done.
All right, so just as a fan, if I wanted to send some money to Alabama Crimson Tide softball star Montana Fouts, I could do that, and I would not be the creepy old man sending her money.
You would not. You would be just a fan giving her money, and you get a nice little Montana Fouts piece of digital art back that, I don't know. You can look. It doesn't have a picture on it. It's just a random piece of digital art with a digital. I mean, look, it's been created to facilitate the transaction.
How do you think that the smaller school athletes will do through programs like yours, through mynil.com, mynilpay.com?
I think as this develops, look, with everything, it's about awareness. Without people knowing about it, it's just a good idea. But I think once everyone knows about it, I think it's the smaller school athletes and kids that are going to benefit most from it. And I think it's the more underserved, so I think women's athletics are going to crush this. I think some of the D2 and D3s are really going to find a niche with this because those schools don't have the resources to have these big Yay Alabama and these big programs, the collectives to raise money. So they have to do it other ways, and they haven't found those other ways. My NIL Pay fills that gap.
Yeah, even Toledo, I believe, and I can't remember what it's called, has a collective. I don't think it's obviously not going to be as big as the Yay Alabama collective or the Buckeye collective that I think Urban Meyer's involved with now. But I think all the schools are looking at every opportunity, and I absolutely agree with you. I think that some of the female athletes will do especially well on programs like this. And if you're a star, I mean, you're obviously going to attract attention. And man, the next step here, Brent, we're talking to Brent Chapman. He founded mynilpay.com. The next step is going to be figuring out a way to link your program in with betting apps like DraftKings and BetMGM. So if I lay a parlay on Bryce Young to throw five touchdowns, and he does, and I win $100, 10 of that goes back to Bryce.
Yeah, so everyone, that was Scott's idea. But DraftKings, feel free to call.
There's absolutely nothing potentially illegal in a deal like that.
No, I mean, look, as long as the athlete isn't involved in the activity, if you want to give proceeds of your winnings to an athlete, I mean, it's it's fine, right? It's not contingent on it, right?
Right.
It's whatever. I made money at work today and decided to give some of that to an athlete. It's no different than if you picked the Heat right last night and you made a little bit of money. So, hey, Scott, I'm going to be with your guy tomorrow, Nick Saban, in D.C. A bunch of these guys are going up there to lobby Congress on all this NIL stuff. Okay. And there's a big event tomorrow evening to try to get them to see the light. Whatever that means.
Tell the greatest coach of all time to return my calls. He's been ignoring my calls for a few years.
He has been. I'll tell you what. I'll tell him when I see him that Scott Sands in Toledo wants time with you.
Well, Coach Saban got a start at the University of Toledo too. By the way, I mean,
did he really? Yeah. Now I'll add in a little personal note here. I went to high school in Northwest Detroit, Rochester Hills.
Yeah.
So I'm from the same area, just a couple-hour drive away from you guys.
Well, it's good to talk to you, Brent Chapman, mynilpay.com. What do you get out? Are you taking cuts out of this? Is that how that works for your end?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying about the take advantage early on. Is we looked at the market and the kind of consumer to fan to athlete products. And when I say that is there's nothing like us, but there's like Cameo and there's some marketplaces where you can do a shout out and stuff. They all take between 25 and 40%, which I think is absurd to take from the athlete, right? So if you give like in our app, the athlete gets 90%. And there's a whole bunch of fees we have to pay, credit card fees and all this stuff. So we end up getting about 3 or 4% of the transaction for operations. So really I'm doing it as at bare knuckle thin because I went into this. My mission is to love and serve student athletes. And so I want them to get the majority of their money. And so I structured a company in which that can happen.
Interesting stuff. Brent, maybe we can touch base next week. We'll see if Congress decides to wade into the NIL controversy.
Well, I'm hoping they stay out of it for now, but we'll see what they do. I'll be there to at least give my voice.
Look, man, so I wish Congress would stay out of more things, too.
Well, I won't talk about that, but this NIL, I'm good with where let us figure it out, let the states figure it out, and then, eventually maybe we can look at some grander solutions. I just don't think we know enough now. Right. I think it's too new yet.
MyNILPay.com. Brent, great talking to you. I'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Take care, man.
Something is missing from the online college experience. Heart. At ACU Online, we teach from our hearts. We're Abilene Christian University, and we believe education should go beyond the facts by offering a true Christ-centered private school education at a competitive price. Education with heart. That's ACU Online. Pursue your graduate or undergraduate degree at ACU Online. acu.edu.